Welcome back, Pauls. Let's see who's the real Jacob Auburn. Let's go straightly to the chapter. It's chapter 13, An Actor's Ruse. Spellbound, Nancy stood like a stone image, gazing down into the face of Jacob Auburn. How had the man reached the bungalow ahead of her? What was he doing sleeping in the musty cell of the old shack? As these thoughts flashed through Nancy's mind, the beam of a flashlight flickered again. Then it went out, leaving her in total darkness. Sheer panic took possession of the girl's detective. Something very strange was going on. She must not be caught in a trap. Turning, she gave a low cry and stumbled up the stairway and towards the window through which she had entered. Her flight was abruptly checked as she banged one foot on something metallic that moved ahead of her. In a second, she smelled kerosene. A lantern, she decided. The thought of a light gave her hope. She felt around and discovered an old-time oil lantern. Collecting her wits, she stopped and listened for any sounds of pursuit. There was none. The shack appeared as deserted and silent as before. I am sure that was Jacob Auburn down in the cellular, Nancy thought in perplexity. I didn't imagine it. But how did he get here so fast? After I left his house, I didn't waste much time. Suddenly, an amazing thought came to Nancy. Was the man she had seen by a chance a brother? Even a twin of Jacob Auburn? He might be honest and Jacob had found him the way. I'm going to find out, Nancy declared excitedly. Eagerly, she reached into the pocket of her dress, recalling that at dinner she had taken a pack of matches from the hotel dining table for her souvenir connection. Good, the pack was still there. Striking a match, she was pleased to discover that the lantern was half full of oil. Someone had used it recently, for the glass was clean. Nancy lighted the wick and a flame sputtered up. Carrying the lantern, she returned to the trapdoor. Suddenly from below, Nancy heard a moan of pain. This was followed by a pitiful cry of "Help!" That settles it, the worried girl thought. As she descended the steps, the lantern flickering glows revealed that the cellular was dungeon-like with solid stone walls and no windows. She held the light high above the figure on the bench. A man, deathly pale, was lying where she had first seen him, but he was not Laura's guardian. That's certainly a startling resemblance, though, Nancy thought, her heart filled with pity for this unfortunate stranger. Dropping to her knees, she felt his pulse. It was faint but regular. He is just unconscious, she told herself in relief. At the same time, Nancy saw with horror a large chain around the man's waist. It was attached to the prisoner in such a way that it allowed him some freedom of motion and yet held him captivated. Was Jacob Auburn responsible for this atrocity? Nancy wondered angrily. I must do something to revive this man, she decided, and get him away from here. Picking up the lantern, Nancy mounted the cellar steps two at a time. She headed from a small sink in one corner of the room above where she had seen a pump. After a search through the cupboard, she at last found a battered tin cup. Quickly pumping water into it, she returned to the cellar. Nancy wet her handkerchief and applied it gently to the prisoner's forehead. Then she sprinkled a little of the water on his face and chafed his wrists. The man stirred slightly and moved. As she gazed anxiously into his face, Nancy wondered how she could have mistaken him for Jacob Auburn. Although the two men were of the same age and had similar facial characteristics, the prisoner was gaunt and thin. His features, contrary to Mr. Auburn's, were gentle and relaxed. Now Nancy saw that the man was slowly regaining consciousness. As his eyes fluttered open, he cried, "Help!" feebly, then stared into Nancy's face amazed. "Help has come," Nancy said quietly. The man attempted to raise himself to a sitting position with Nancy's aid. "Didn't think help would ever come," he murmured. Then he saw the cup in Nancy's hand and asked for water. Nancy steadied the cup while he drank. Finally, the man leaned against the wall. "First water I ever drank in 24 hours, he said more clearly. The young sleuth was horrified. She introduced herself, then asked, "Who are you and who did this terrible thing to you?" A bitter expression passed over the prisoner's face. "I am Jacob Auburn," he said. "A crook by the name of Stumpy Dowd took over my house, imprisoned me here, and someone or other arranged for my new ward, Laura Pendleton, to come to my home earlier than she was expected. Yesterday he told me that he had the girl's inheritance in his possession and showed bonds to prove it." "You're Jacob Auburn?" Nancy repeated as the prisoner, exhausted by these words, leaned against the wall. Quickly, Nancy's mind flashed back to everything that had happened since she had met Laura. The puzzling questions that had bothered her about the girl's guardian now became clear. Most of all, it was a relief to know that the person to whom Mary Middleton has entrusted her daughter care was not a criminal. Equally important, Nancy realized that Stephen Dowd, alias Stumpy, used his talents as an actor and skill which make up to fool other people and then probably swindle swindle them. The young sleuth wondered if there was a tie-in between Laura's inheritance and the National Bank theft of stocks and bonds. She must find out from Jacob Auburn, but the police should be notified immediately as well as her father. Aloud, Nancy said, "I want to hear the whole story of what had happened to you, Mr. Auburn, but first..." Briefly, she told of having met the man who had impersonated him and of seeing Laura at Twin Lakes. Nancy was about to add that Laura was now at her home when Mr. Auburn said, "If Stumpy caught you here once today, we would better get out right now." He told Nancy that Dowd kept the key to the padlock on his chains on a hook near the stairway. "This is a lucky break," Nancy said. She snatched the lantern from the floor and started towards the stairs. "Please hurry," Mr. Auburn said faintly. "Stumpy Dowd is a dangerous criminal. He boasted to me that he and his accomplices have victimized several people besides Laura." Nancy anxiously moved the lantern up and down, illuminating the dingy walls. Just above her head to the left, she finally saw the hook, with the key dangling from it. "I have it," she examined him pathetically. As Nancy hurried back to Mr. Auburn's side, she speculated on how the Dowds had found out about Mr. Auburn, his wife, and Laura. "I'll have you free in a minute, Mr. Auburn," Nancy said as she stopped over the bench. While she worked on the rusty lock, Nancy asked if he had known the Dowds previously. "Yes," he replied. "Mrs. Dowd was hired by my wife as a maid to come when we arrived. Soon after I reached the house, her husband came. He grew quite loud and abusive, and when I objected, he knocked me unconscious. When I came to, I was chained in the cellular." "How dreadful," Nancy exclaimed. "But where is your wife?" she asked. "She had to go to Florida unexpectedly. Her mother, who lives there, had an emergency operation. Marian went down to be with her, and I moved into our new home." Mr. Auburn sighed. "Of course, I haven't heard a word from her since I'd been tied up here." "You'll be able to find out about her now," Nancy assured him. "Do you know how many people are working with Stumpy Dowd?" "One or two other besides his wife, I believe. Stumpy Dowd is a secretive about some things, although he boasted a lot. I did hear him mention the name Fred, but I don't know who he is." When the padlock finally snapped open, Nancy's spirits soared. Now the suitcase of securities that Stumpy Dowd has padlocked could be retrieved. The criminals could be apprehended and their father's case perhaps solved. Meanwhile, neither Nancy nor Mr. Auburn had noticed a dark figure creeping slowly down the steps. Nearer and nearer the man came, a stout cane gripped tightly in his right hand. "That's wonderful, Nancy," Mr. Auburn exclaimed. "Now, if I just knew where Laura is." As he spoke, Mr. Auburn glanced up. A look of horror froze his face. "Look out, Nancy!" he shouted. "Oh my God, who is that black figure?" Stay tuned for the next chapter, guys. Have a happy day.